Springfield's news and talk.
Well, welcome back to another day after the holidays. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. And we are live and local on this December 27th after having the day off yesterday, post-Christmas. But we've also got the New Year's holiday coming up, so my live availability will be limited until after the New Year, after today. But you can always follow along, Bishop on Air on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Just search those out, and you can subscribe and follow along, where I will be updating whatever comes across my desk throughout. So check out the social media pages. But over the weekend and on the Christmas Eve holiday, where a lot of you were sitting back relaxing, there was a substantial structure fire in Springfield. And a listener passed along video that they captured early in the morning on Christmas Eve. And when I opened it up, I was floored just with how dramatic and how large scale this particular fire was on 11th and Enos in downtown Springfield. And if you, of course, have seen some of the footage and other media sharing what they captured, it was a really kind of eerie an ominous sign, an ominous sight, I should say, a scene that really would send shivers down your spine just with how large it was all across that particular block. So this was the old Salvation Army Goodwill sorting center. Apparently it was also a shoe factory back in the day. And if you follow along, you could see some other pictures that were shared of the just dramatic scene. All kinds of fire crews responding. And it wasn't just, one small building. This was the entire block practically that was on fire here. And you could see even more of the images and the video of firefighters dousing inside, trying to get control and maintain the fire within the perimeter of that particular space. Really just harrowing. The amount of work that they had to do and still have yet to do. But here's the question. And this was, of course, during a really, really cold evening. And you had sub-zero temperatures. You had wind chills that were very much deadly. And people who are experiencing homelessness, that's the type of situation they don't want to be in. And they will find some kind of shelter. But too often we have vacant buildings that people go to find shelter in and squat in, and then it turns into a fire hazard, which is what we saw unfold on Christmas Eve. How do we get control of this? Especially with the availability of shelters, because this is obviously a huge fire that led to a whole host of firefighters and law enforcement and utility crews that had to respond to this and the costs associated with it. I can't imagine what the actual cost is, and it'd be interesting to see that breakdown of what the cost is of sending out all the personnel from multiple agencies to deal with this. And would that be dramatically reduced if we had better plans for more shelters and maybe a team to go out and be on the streets to look for individuals who need that shelter, and having low barrier shelters, something that we hear a lot about. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 217-629-7970. How do we get control of this? How do we ensure that we don't have people going into vacant buildings and squatting? Especially trying to stay warm, maybe making some makeshift fires, and then leading to structural fires that could engulf entire city block, which is what we saw happen on Christmas Eve. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. 217-629-7970. Are you willing to devote more resources to having more overflow shelters, heating centers, places that individuals can go, low barrier places? And when I talk about low barrier places, I'm talking about places that don't mind if the individual may have been drunk or on drugs or a variety of other circumstances that could keep them out of other shelters that have certain barriers for people to take advantage of their services. Because if we don't have something, then we're going to see more of these types of instances of buildings just being ablaze. And it's frightening to see. It's especially if you live in that area, just the magnitude of it. And the scope of just how large of this fire was, and even reading the report that ultimately came out from the fire department. I mean, they laid it out. Here's what Chief Brandon Blau had to say, the incident narrative that happened on Christmas Eve. General fire alarm came at 4:45, stating heavy fire. Units arrived on scene, immediately called for upgraded response. Building was a formerly Salvation Army building. It was in disrepair and open to trespass. Due to the heavy fire conditions, the poor conditions of the building, and overall size, it stretched the entire block from 10th Street to 11th Street on Enos. Springfield Fire Department started defensive operations only from the exterior of the building. The next shift's personnel were contacted and asked to report early for additional manpower. The building had multiple collapses, including the second roof and exterior walls, but the crew's hard work stopped the fire from spreading and adjoined a larger building to the north. Squatters exited the building and stated that there may have been others inside. The heavy fire conditions and lack of structural integrity prevented crews from going inside to do a search. It's unknown at this time if additional people were inside the building. Sub-zero temperatures and high winds required more manpower, and a rehab bus was sent by SMTD to allow firefighters to thaw out and recover and resume operations. That's pretty remarkable that it was so cold. Firefighters had to have some place to duck in to get warm. That's just how cold it was. There were 6 engine companies, 3 companies, 1 from Sherman Fire Department, 2 command vehicles, and 4 additional command staff personnel called in. During operations on 11th Street, another fire occurred utilizing all remaining units in Springfield, including an extra company made up of crew members that had just left the 11th Street scene. It's believed the largest building fire in Springfield since the Weaver Paint Factory in the 1970s. And extinguishment is still ongoing. This was a report that I got from the Springfield Fire Department, I believe, on Christmas Day. But Fire Chief Blau goes on to say he wants to thank all the men and women of the Springfield Fire Department for their hard work in absolutely insufferable conditions. We know some of them have frostbite, but not other injuries have been reported. Also want to thank Springfield Police Department, Public Works, CWLP, especially the Water Department for assisting in boosting water pressure on scene, and the Salvation Army and Red Cross for setting up canteens for all crews on scene. More information as the chief gets it, but this is obviously a large structure fire, as the chief said. Believed to be the largest building fire in Springfield since the Weaver Paint Factory fire in the 1970s. That was way before my time. Maybe some of you remember that, but just a harrowing scene on Christmas Eve. Something I think you have to really stop and appreciate the firefighters for what they do, because it's times like these where they just jump into action, and you've got this huge fire, multiple crews, beyond frigid temperatures, just not something you want to have to deal with on Christmas Eve. But Springfield Fire jumped into it, and still a search underway for any possible victims that could be in there, because, of course, as the fire report said, there were squatters that exited the building and said there might still be some people in there. So obviously, that story is going to be updated, but how do we get control of the possibility of squatters going into vacant buildings and possibly starting makeshift fires to keep warm, leading to what we saw happen on Christmas Eve? I think it's an important question that everybody in Springfield and anywhere really needs to answer and dig deep on. All right, it is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Let's take a look at Springfield's dependable 5-day forecast, where after that cold snap, it's going to warm up with a high near 30 today. Still some negative wind chills possible as the wind gusts get up to 22 miles an hour. Overnight in Springfield, mostly clear, the low of 25. Wednesday, sunny with a high of 44. And then Thursday, a chance of drizzle with a high up to 56. For Friday, chance of rain with a high of 47. Right now, though, it's 9 degrees out there. With Springfield's Morning News, I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.